Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think you know the state of play on the Senate floor. We're going to vote on cloture tomorrow to try to get to a vote on a substitute amendment I offered in concurrence with the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Corker, which would put the Senate on record in favor of not suspending the sanctions against Iran until Iran recognizes Israel and releases the American hostages they've been holding. The reason for this, quite frankly, is that Chairman Corker and I had tried to conduct this debate in a way that would get us to a final vote by discouraging amendments that would have altered the president's deal with Iran. And what we ended up getting in return was a filibuster against a measure the president is proud of, would have had no trouble whatsoever vetoing the resolution of disapproval. And so they trivialized the process that we tried to treat with great respect. And so I think this was an appropriate way to end the debate in the Senate, given their behavior on this important issue. Let me just say one word about the continuing resolution. We're in discussion with the House about how to go forward on that. It is my hope that we will end up having a continuing resolution into later this year, which will give time for us to engage with the administration in determining how much we're going to spend and where we're going to spend it. Unfortunately, this is the inevitable result of Senate Democrats not allowing us to proceed to any of the appropriation bills. This is the first time, I think, in 5 years the Senate Appropriations Committee has reported out every single bill consistent with the spending restraints of the budget that we passed earlier this year. And they were quite candid about the reason they did that. They wanted to force us to spend more on everything. And so we are inevitably going to end up in a negotiation that will crack the Budget Control Act once again. And let me just say this about the Budget Control Act. Before we started revisiting it, it actually did a pretty good job. We reduced government spending for the first time, for 2 years in a row, for the first time since right after the Korean War. And so if the goal was to reduce government spending, it worked pretty well. But there's a lot of pressure in Congress to spend more. The administration certainly wants to spend more, and the president, of course, is in a key position to determine whether any of these bills, should he get them, become law. So we'll end up in the negotiation that I just described. Now I want to turn to Chairman Corker and let him give you his thoughts, and then we'll hear from others.
Well, thank you, Leader. I first want to I want to thank our leader. If you think about what's happened, everyone understands that the president entered into an executive agreement. An executive agreement allows the president to do what he wishes, but he created an environment and allowed me as a chairman of the committee, the first time I've ever been chairman of the committee, he allowed me to walk through this in a way to keep the strong bipartisanship that existed, and ended up creating the conditions for a 98-1 vote for people on both sides of the aisle to say that while we understand this is an executive agreement and we understand this will only stand until the next president comes along, before you alleviate these sanctions, we want to pause, we want to see the deal, and we want a right to vote our conscience. So the first thing I want to do is say thank you. We had a floor debate, and candidly, there was pent-up demand on our side of the aisle for the type of amendment that he has offered. And what we did was we ended up having that debate regarding the Iran Review Act itself, and those amendments didn't come forward. They didn't come forward for us to be able to keep, again, that comedy between the two sides that allowed us to have such an overwhelming vote. Now, what that vote was about was giving us the right, after we reviewed the substance of the deal for 60 days, it gave us the right to vote our conscience. And what has happened, unfortunately, on the floor, as you all know, a cloture vote is a vote to end debate. I think everyone understands we've had 12 hearings in the Foreign Relations Committee. We've had ad nauseum debate. The Armed Services Committee has had hearing. The Intelligence Committee. As a matter of fact, the American people, I think, and I know the Senate and House know more about this executive agreement that was done going straight to the UN Security Council. They know more about this agreement than any agreement that's occurred in modern times. And so now we're at the point where we want to end debate, and we want the opportunity of people to vote up or down on their conscience. And what has happened is, in a partisan minority vote way, 42 senators are keeping that from happening. And so, look, the fact is that we're at the end. It appears they're not going to give us that opportunity, and we have members that have cared greatly about the amendment that the leader has put forth. And since it appears we're not going to have the opportunity, and by the way, I want to say one more thing. The leader honored our word, and that was that as we entered this debate, we would allow it to be about a motion of disapproval only. He honored that. He filled the tree. We have a lot of members that have wanted to have all kinds of amendments brought to bear. The leader honored our commitment to make sure that this debate was sober, it was responsible, and was about the subject at hand. And by the way, both sides have kept it about that. So look, now members are going to be able to express themselves in a different way. If, in fact, on a third try we're not able to get to a place where we can actually vote on the substance of the deal, I think American people know where folks stand, but we aren't able to get to that place, and I thank him for the way he's handled this. I thank him for allowing me to be chairman and handle this in a way that has kept great bipartisanship around this very unpopular issue. I'm just saddened that now we're at the point and we're unable to actually get to that final vote. I don't understand it. As has been mentioned, the president's very proud of this. I think he'd be proud to veto it. It's taken on a little Tammy Wynette flavor to me, stand by your man, but I wish that we could go on and finish our business in the way we started, and I thank him for the way he's led.
Thanks, Bob.
On another topic, given the ever-changing stories and the never-ending drama of Servergate or Emailgate with Secretary Clinton, given the fact that the FBI is now investigating this matter seriously, they are the world-class experts, the forensic experts at the FBI, to be able to get to the bottom of this from a factual standpoint. I thought it was appropriate to write a letter to Attorney General Loretta Lynch and asking her to appoint a special counsel. As you know, the Attorney General, when she has a conflict of interest, and of course she serves at the pleasure of Barack Obama, the President of the United States, and I think to a fair-minded person you might think that she has a conflict of interest and would be disinclined to fully investigate this matter and indeed prosecute it should the facts warrant it. So under current law, long existing law, we have a provision where the Attorney General can appoint a special counsel, and I've asked her to do that. It's no secret that Eric Holder was one of the most political attorney generals ever in the United States, the first attorney general, to my knowledge, to be held in contempt of Congress for failing to comply with lawful requests for information. So I think this is really an opportunity for the new attorney general, who is a professional prosecutor, not a politician, to do the right thing and appoint a special counsel to supervise this investigation that's already ongoing by the FBI. So I hope she responds affirmatively and makes that appointment.
Was already been mentioned now, we've had twice now, there have only been 4 Democrats in the Senate who have put aside partisan politics and broken ranks with their leadership in order to support an up and down vote on the Iran nuclear agreement. And the reason that it's deeply disappointing is because if you look at where the American people are on this, this is their opportunity to have their voices heard. Pew poll from last week said that support for the deal had dropped to 21%, down from 33% in July. The CNN poll from over the weekend said that only 37% of the people in the country actually approve of the way that the president is handling the situation with Iran. This is the opportunity for the American people to have their voices heard on a very, very serious national security issue, and it continues to be blocked by the Senate Democrats. In many respects, this is kind of like the Obamacare of foreign policy for this administration. They are forcing a really bad deal down the throats of the American people and not even giving the American people, through their elected representatives, a vote in the United States Senate. It's not too late to change that. We still have an opportunity. The Democrats can see the light and join us and at least allow this thing to be voted on in an up and down way, which I think is consistent not only with what the American people deserve, but certainly with the agreement that was reached earlier this year that Senator Corker alluded to, where 98 senators voted to allow this to happen. And now all of a sudden, because of partisan politics, the Democrats have decided to go down a different path, and one that's very contrary to what's in the best interests of the American people and our country.
For a lot of reasons, the process we've gone through here is frustrating and imperfect. The Congress, the Senate, can't force the president to enter into a treaty that binds the country if the president's not willing to do this. So this, as you can hear by listening to the presidential debate, what the president is about to get done here, while not supported by the American people, is also not binding on any future president. Doesn't mean it doesn't have negative consequences. Doesn't mean it doesn't change the Middle East for a long time, but it does mean it's not binding. And so some frustration about the process we're going through, but at least the process created 60 days where this was talked about. And before that started, 98 senators, as has already been mentioned, voted that we should vote on this agreement. Now, we've had 60 days to talk, so we have had our say. As Senator Corker suggested, the vote that we've had twice now was just a vote to end the debate. I don't see anybody on the other side eager to continue the debate, but they're not prepared to vote to end the debate, because that means you'd actually have to vote on the agreement, something that they all said in just a few months ago that the Congress should do. So we come to the end of this process, and the vote we'll have this week on the Leader's Amendment. Of course, that's a reasonable position for us to take. When the person we just negotiated with, his government, the supreme leader of Iran, says that Israel should not exist 25 years from now, and you would assume that's when they're on the best behavior while they're trying to get us to agree to a deal. But Israel should not exist 25 years from now, according to the supreme leader of Iran. I think it's time for the United States Congress, starting with the Senate, to say that is not an acceptable place to be. And 3 hostages, a Christian pastor, a former member of the U.S. military, and a reporter, being held apparently because they're a Christian pastor, a former member of the U.S. military, and a reporter, should have been, months ago, one of the things we insisted on happen, that they be set free before these negotiations even continued. They haven't. Those people and their family continue to suffer. It's unreasonable, it's unacceptable, and apparently nobody's going to do anything about it. But the Senate has a chance this week to say what we believe absolutely has to be done about those 3 people and their families.
Mr. Leader, how do you feel about the next couple of weeks when it comes to government spending? Does this seem like a couple of years ago? Are you starting to lose sleep? I mean, what are the atmospherics here compared to others? I mean, you've been insistent what your position is.
Yeah.
What about the internal?
The question was, am I losing sleep? No, I'm not. And we're going to fund the government. We're not going to shut the government down. And we will do that, hopefully, into late fall. And as I indicated earlier, we'll enter into the discussion that has been forced by the Democratic minority in the Senate, refusing to let us take up appropriation bills. We'll be forced into a discussion about how much we're going to spend. We know our Democratic friends' goal is to spend more on everything. As all of you know, I've got members who want to spend more on defense. I'd put myself in that group as well. And we'll enter into a classic negotiation in which we work out our differences and fund the government.
How can you be so confident at this stage? You've said repeatedly we're going to not shut down the
How can I be confident?
Yeah.
I just am. We're not we're not going to shut the government down.
Leader McConnell, I
Yeah.
understand next week you're going to be voting on pro-life legislation.
Yeah.
So does that mean you take up the clean CR in the September 28th to 30th timeframe, and do you think the Senate should move first?
Well, how we end up doing the short-term continuing resolution, we're still in discussion with the House, so I don't have any news to make on that front today, but obviously it'll be sometime after we vote on the 20-week pain-capable bill, which I ruled 14 yesterday and will file cloture on tomorrow. Yeah.
John Stewart is on Capitol Hill today advocating for 9/11 first responders health care, the essential health care program for 9/11 responders. Do you think that program should be extended, and could that be a part of the CR, could it be a part of government?
Well, I'm going to be meeting with first responders later today to myself. We do plan to extend the program, and the committees of jurisdiction in the House or Senate are actually working on the details now.
Leader McConnell,
Yeah.
Following up to your comments this morning, what about oil exports? Are you going to bring those to the floor? And how soon?
Well, I support eliminating the oil export ban. Apparently, the deal with Iran is going to go into effect. The Iranians are going to be able to export their oil, and we're not. It's absolutely illogical. Senator Cornyn's been talking about this with a bunch of us for quite a while. So I do support lifting the oil export ban, and that'll be among other items that we discuss with the administration as we move toward resolving all of these differences.
Mr. Leader, tonight is the second Republican debate, and a lot of the leading candidates have been pushing for Republicans to dig in on defunding Planned Parenthood. How is that impacting your calculations as you look ahead to the state?
Well, there are not many fans of Planned Parenthood in my conference, certainly not me. We've all been appalled by the videos we've seen. The question is, how do we achieve the goal? If you shut down the government, you will not defund Planned Parenthood. It will not happen. As Senator Blunt's pointed out, I'm told about 28 million of the roughly 500 million they get comes from appropriated accounts, so it wouldn't succeed. Are not going to engage in exercises in futility. We've already voted one time in the Senate to try to defund Planned Parenthood. We know the president wouldn't sign such a bill, so it will not succeed. And so I'm not in favor of exercises in futility. We need to deal with the world that we have. We have a president who deeply supports Planned Parenthood and will not sign a bill that defunds it. And even if he did sign such a bill, it wouldn't work, because this would only take a small portion of the funds away from Planned Parenthood. Most of it is an entitlement that they get largely through Medicaid. Finally, I would say, if you read today what Carol Tobias, the head of National Right to Life, had to say about this, it's the strategy they don't think makes much sense, because it doesn't succeed. So the cold hard reality for those of us who don't support Planned Parenthood is we need a president who has a similar view and would sign such a bill. Thank you.